Hey folks, making this video about the new moon in Leo, this Leo cycle that's starting August 26th and August 27th. You can see early in the morning on August 27th, that's this screenshot here. You see the sun and moon come together pretty much right at that point, 9 degrees of Leo, very early in the morning on the 27th here in the West. So for the most part on the 26th, that's when we're really going to feel that new moon, and the moon gets very dark at that time. As the moon becomes new, it disappears in the sky. So that's what we see. And this will be happening, as I say, August 26th and 27th. So I'm going to be talking about that. Please like, share, subscribe if you appreciate this video, and let people know about this offering. Again, it's a very important cycle that is happening now, because these new moons and full moons are really the sort of 2-week cycles that we're all kind of grappling with overall. And based on where this sign of Leo falls in your chart, based on your rising sign, this will be an emphasis for the next 30 days. This cycle of Leo. It's Leo, but it's this house. So for example, if you're Libra, it's the 11th house cycle that's happening for you. If you're Cancer, you just had the new moon cycle in your first house. So now it's moving on to the second house. So again, this is how these cycles work. And I talk about these a lot to educate people so that you understand. So please like, share, and subscribe, as I said, and also leave a comment. Excuse me. And also, these cycles I go through in my daily forecast site. If you haven't been a member before, only 50 cents, you can have a 14-day trial and get these new and full moon updates. I'm going to do an entire new moon update for all of the members for each of the 12 signs so that you understand how this Leo cycle affects you. Again, let's say you're Scorpio, it's happening in your 10th house. So it's a 10th house emphasis. And then the full moon 2 weeks later will be happening in your 4th house. So that'll be the emphasis there. So again, this keeps happening all the time. But not only do you get my full and new moon forecast, but you also get daily forecasts based on the classical Indian Panchanga is what it's called. I just dropped the link in the chat so you can register at the Astrology Training Lab. Click the link and you can register there. But you get these daily forecasts, and then you also get the monthly planner. We're about to hit September, and we're going to have a new month, and the monthly planner will be out. These daily forecasts have been written by Sebastian Uria. You can see they're based on the classical Indian timekeeping. This is the timekeeping that goes all the way back into the Vedas, back into the mists of time. And I've modified it to be more updated with the zodiac signs. But you have the Nakshatra, the Tithi or the lunar day, and also the Vara, which is the day of the week, and also the sign. So Sebastian does those daily forecasts, and then Melissa does monthly calendars where she tracks all of the transits for that month, and also gives a great astro diary that you also get access to. So again, you can try that for 50 cents. And then you also get the full and new moon forecast, which is what I do. 50 cents for a 2-week trial. You can get the daily forecast for 2 weeks, get the member update for Leo. And then after that, if you want to continue, it's about $1 a day, $39.95 for the month. And it's just a recurring charge. You can leave anytime you want. But you also get 8 hours of bonus classes when you register. You get a chart reading template where it shows you how to read your chart. You also get Foundations of Vedic Astrology, 4.5-hour classes to introduce you to it. And then also a group of classes on quantum Vedic astrology where I talk about neuroscience and the brain, also quantum physics. It's a great lesson in those things as well. So again, only 50 cents. You can try that out. So check that out as well. People ask me, what's a great way to get started? And then I say, spend 50 cents and try this out. And then they're like, oh. So anyway, so this new moon in Leo really is based on a few things. First of all, it's the sun and the moon coming together in the sky. So when the sun and moon come together, again, that's called a new moon, and it's called a soli-lunar month. Again, the word month comes from moon. And the Indians and all the ancient cultures were tracking these cycles. In fact, the reason we have 12 months in the sky is because of soli-lunar cycles. They were either tracking 12 full moons each year or 12 new moons. Usually they were measuring it in India by the full moon because we can see the full moon in the sky. This is why the soli-lunar months in India are named after the full moon. This is why this, in many areas of India, is called the month of Bhadrapada, because the full moon in this month will be in probably Purva Bhadrapada or Uttar Bhadrapada. Last month was called Shravan because the full moon last month in the soli-lunar month was likely in the nakshatra of Shravana. So again, they've been tracking it like this all the way back into the Rig Veda and the Yajur Veda in a section called the Vedanga Jyotisha. So this is classical Indian timekeeping that's been happening for thousands and thousands of years. And by the way, like I said, at this member site, the daily forecasts are based on the same factors. This isn't just a bunch of new age gobbledygook that I threw together. It's the nakshatras and the tithis, or the lunar days. So for example, the new moon and the full moon are what are called tithis, or lunar days. There are 15 of them, and we track them every day. You're supposed to track every lunar day and every nakshatra. So this is one of the lunar days. The first lunar day, which is called Amavasya, is the dark moon, and then it starts with the new moon called Pratipad. Is the once the sun and moon pass, or once the moon passes the sun in the sky, then it becomes Pratipad, or the first lunar day. But we also track the nakshatra. It's in the nakshatra of Magha. Magha means the mighty nakshatra, where the king is sitting on the throne, the mighty king on the throne. And of course, that's in the sign of Leo. That makes perfect sense, right? That the star called the mighty one with the king on the throne is in the sign of Leo. Again, just to make sure you understand this, this is why in Indian astrology, Vedic astrology, they use the sidereal sky. They say Aries and Ashwini are at the beginning of the zodiac circle. They knew it was a possibility that people might not use that they might use the vernal equinox as the beginning of the zodiac signs, for example. But they made sure to give a declaration that said, no. Aries, the zodiac sign, is in alignment with Ashwini, the nakshatra. That's how you start the zodiac circle of 12 zodiac signs. Ashwini and Aries are joined. It doesn't say Ashwini starts the nakshatra circle and the zodiac circle starts on the vernal equinox. No, they could have said that, and they didn't. Every directive is Aries and Ashwini. What that means is that by the time when you say Aries and Ashwini, it lines everything up. So then by the time you get to Magha, it's Leo. Again, this is very important because in Western astrology, one of the big things that supposedly happened, and by the way, this is one of the things that is said to be a precursor of the age of Aquarius. Again, I'm doing this because this is kind of new age thinking. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying this is sort of new age thinking. Is one of the things that Western astrologers talk about that says, oh, but this is the sort of beginning of the age of Aquarius, is that this nakshatra of Magha, or what's called Regulus in Western astronomy, is now in Virgo. It's now based on the precession of the equinoxes. Magha, or the mighty king on the throne, has now moved into Virgo, which again, Virgo, which is a young maiden, a young girl who hasn't had her period yet, basically. What does that have to do with the king on the throne? Well, the answer is nothing. So again, this is why we use the sidereal zodiac. Aries and Ashwini are aligned. all the way around. Once you do that, all the nakshatras align with all of the rashis or the zodiac signs. They're not separate. They were never separate. Indians were never confused. It's just not an issue. I know some people say it. That's just not the truth. All you need to do is look in the books. It's not Sam's opinion. Look in a book. Any astrology book that mentions the zodiac says Aries and Ashwini, and I've shown this a lot. So you can really see it at a place like this. Because again, this is why, by the way, if you're watching this and you're used to Western astrology and you're about to leave a comment that says, what? Why does everybody say it's Virgo? Why is everybody saying it's the new moon in Virgo? What are you talking about, you idiot? People love to get on there and tell me what an idiot I am because they don't understand there's a thing called sidereal zodiac. I'm not an idiot. This is the actual constellation. So when you look up in the sky and if you were to see the moon up there, it's actually in the constellation of Leo. Virgo is an extrapolation based on beginning the sign of Aries on the vernal equinox rather than the sky. So again, understand this. It's always been the case. And you can really tell when you get to certain points. This early part of Leo, you can really tell. Because this is Magha Nakshatra. It's a big star there called Regulus. It's one of the cardinal stars along the ecliptic. So there's no question that this is why they nail the integrity of the zodiac to the nakshatras and how you can really see it. You can see it really pretty much everywhere, but this is a major one. And again, this precession of Regulus, in Western astrology, the precession of Regulus into Virgo is supposedly one of the preeminent signs of the age of Aquarius. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure why they say that's the age of Aquarius, what the precession of Regulus into Virgo has to do with the age of Aquarius, but it's supposedly one of these big cosmic shifts because it moved out of the king and now it's Virgo, which has to do with service or something. I'm not sure, but this is one of the things that I see, especially because I said something recently about how the age of Aquarius really isn't for another 400 or 500 years, and several Western astrologers came, well, but then there's also this and there's also that, and what about this? That's fine. People can see things the way they want, but we do Vedic astrology this way for a reason, and it's not just coincidental. So again, it's important to understand this Magha, the mighty king on the throne. And what does this have to do with you and your life? Well, of course, you would think it has a lot to do with it because this is that Leo cycle, and it's a 30-day cycle. It's not like, oh, this is the day of the new moon. Yes, it's the day of the new moon, but it's the day that a 30-day cycle, it's the name of the month of Leo, really. The cosmic month. You see, we have a calendar month based on the Gregorian calendar, which has no resemblance to anything happening in the sky. Especially in the West, we use a Gregorian calendar, which just marks the Earth going around the sun. But that has no, excuse me, resonance with anything cosmological. It has nothing to do with these soli-lunar cycles and these conjunctions of the sun and the moon, and then the full moon and whatnot. So those are really the soli-lunar months or the cosmic months, and the months in the cosmic calendar. And again, that's why I also, this member site will align you with the cosmic calendar, not with just the Gregorian calendar. You see, these days are sacred. Every day is different. You see, this day never repeats. It's never the sun in Aquarius with Purva Bhadra, 5th lunar day, Sunday, on this calendar date. Those things never repeat exactly, especially with all the other planets exactly where they are as well. Every day is unique, whether you know it or not. It's a little bit unique all the time. So this month of Bhadrapada, that would be starting on this soli-lunar. That's the soli-lunar calendar, even though it's August 26th and 27th in the Gregorian calendar. But this is the real month. It's the month of Leo. And like I said, even at my member site, what I do is I do this forecast for this new and full moon, which means for each of the 12 signs, like I'm Gemini. So this starts a third house cycle for me. So starting on the 26th, 27th, the next 30 days, I'm going to be very much in this third house energy, whether I know it or not. So whether you know it or not, if you're Taurus, it's a fourth house cycle that's starting. And then halfway through it, there's the full moon, which is coming in to contrast that fourth house obsession, if you're Taurus, with a 10th house reflection back. So these cosmic cycles are always happening in the sky. These are really the months, the months of the cosmic year. You're a cosmic being and you're disconnected from it. The sun and the moon are always moving in relation to your nature. And so that's why these cycles are important. So when we look at where it's happening, it's not just the sign of Leo, which is that sign of empowerment. It's ruled by the sun. It's where you take that confidence and vision in your heart and move forward and take it into something transcendent, beyond just the limited body and mind, and the confidence that you get based on the things you've already done and stuff like that. No, it's actually where you transcend that limited matrix of personal confidence and personal power, and even power struggles with other limited people in bodies, and you elevate that, spiral that up towards something higher, where you're dedicated to something higher, a higher vision, a higher purpose, full empowerment, not just limited empowerment as a separate person. Hang on a second. That's the sign of Leo. Leo is where, and that's the nature of the sun, the ruler, where you really test your limits. And the way you test your limits is by getting outside your comfort zone, by getting outside of that thing that you think is your true nature. You think you only have this much capacity. You think you only have this much energy. You only have this much power. And it's based on external circumstances. Your power is based on all these externalizing circumstances, but that's not your true nature. It's not your true power. Your true nature and your true power is transcendent of this body, of this lifetime. But you have to be dedicated to something higher in order to step into something higher. If you're not stepping into something higher, then you're going to stay in the smaller self. And we'll do that naturally. For example, like when people have children, they'll step into something higher because they need to expand in order to meet the challenge. Or something like your work or your career where it really means a lot to you. And not just your personal power so you can defeat others, but especially if your work and your career is connected to your swadharma and you're going to be pushed outside your comfort zone. That's the sun. That's Leo. And this next month or so is going to be incumbent upon your capacity, or it's going to be pressuring your capacity to step outside your comfort zone. And you'll be challenged, or you'll notice where you're not meeting the challenge. Again, sometimes astrologers get it backwards. They say, you should be doing blah, blah, blah. It's not a matter of what you should be doing. What's going to be happening is you're going to be aware of how much you're doing this in your life or you're shrinking from your challenges. This is what sun and moon and Leo coming together mean. I talked about it when the sun went into Leo. I talked about these ideas. Now when the cycle starts and sun and moon come together, it's going to really fire off that life lesson where you're going to be aware of how much you're getting the most out of your limited power. And are you extending that? Are you just being constrained by the ego and your limited power? Because if you are, you might start to feel envious or jealous or angry at other people who have the power you want. This is that limited nature of Leo and that 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 you say egoistic quality, where we get into power struggles with others because we perceive they're more powerful than we are. They have the power that we want, so we'll get into power struggles with them. For example, look, when you're empowered yourself, you don't have time to get into power struggles with other people. You might say something and call out something where you see that power isn't being used properly the way you see it, or in alignment with truth, or whatever it might be, but you're not going to get into some war with another king, let's say. You're not going to be envious of what someone else has. You're not going to be envious of another person's kingdom when you're empowered through your own. Why? Because you have too much work to do. A virtuous, mighty king is busy. He's got a lot of work to do, maintaining that kingdom and keeping that vision going forward. And the purity of his vision or her vision also, gives them higher conduct, gives them a higher purpose. So they realize that getting into battles and struggles with others is just a waste of time. It's punching down. That doesn't mean you don't call out the truth or you don't talk about big things that might upset others. Yeah, you can do that, of course, because that's keeping the vision pure. But if somebody gets mad and wants to fight with you over it or whatever, usually a pure king doesn't have the time unless the battle is worth it. If it's worth it, then you have to do the battle. But then you're not battling with the person, you're battling just to clarify the truth. And you're keeping the vision clear. The vision of the kingdom is what's important. So you can see this coming out when, for example, like with parents and whatnot. Good parents aren't going to get into power struggles with their children. They're going to remember that they have the power. And if there's any time where there needs to be punishment or some other kind of thing, they do it with humanity. They're not doing it to get revenge because that child dare challenge their authority. Think about it. No, instead they realize that the real vision of the kingdom and the real point of having the kingdom and the children and whatnot is to allow them to flourish and grow. And getting insulted or offended because the children are challenging you, you don't exact revenge on them. You don't take revenge on them. You don't abuse them or get into a power struggle with them. That's called punching down. So again, this virtuous conduct in service of a higher vision and purpose is really that what you recognize when you see the sign of Leo fully developed. And it used to be the sign of the governments and the kings and the leaders were these types of people. For example, Lord Rama, Lord Krishna, these ancient Indian, characters from their epic tales and whatnot. They were kings. They were the most virtuous people in the kingdom. So the kingdom was run by the most virtuous people. Now it's not like that. Now the politicians and the quote kings in many ways are the most corrupt. And the only people that want to get into those systems are the corruptible and the corrupted. That's why the systems are corrupt, and we're very jaded by things like politics and the government and all, because it's become a gathering point of false kings, of pseudo kings, of those who just want to take from the kingdom, not give to the kingdom, of those who just are doing it for their own vanity, for their own wealth, for their own aggrandizement. So you can see the difference very clearly and see it in your own life. See in your own life, how are you empowering those things that are at the center of your life and existence and truthful identity? Again, because this is the nature of the sun and the sign of Leo, is that truthful identity, which is transcendent, as I said at the beginning. And when you find that thing, like with me, it's astrology and teaching this and all these Vedic sciences and teaching them, connecting with these things have actually not just made me a better person generally, but literally made me not be as personally aggressive and contentious and get into these fights or whatever else it is that I was saying earlier. Like everyone, I did a lot more of that and might do some of it now when I'm not performing these duties. And again, this is actually what Dharma is. And this is why you see many times that in Indian, in Sanskrit, they'll translate the word Dharma as duty. They'll just put the word duty on it. And we don't really understand what duty is in the West because we don't really grow up with a sense of duty. But when they put the word duty onto Dharma, this is what they mean. Because when you're doing your duty in the highest, most honorable way, all of those things I just said happen automatically. When a parent is doing their duty correctly, all of those things I just described about not fighting with your kids, punching down, dominating them, being a tyrant, happen naturally. This is also why children bring Dharma into your life. They're a dharmic thing, just like gurus are also an aspect of Dharma. The 5th house and the 9th house astrologically, the appearance of those things automatically elevate your behavior and connect you with Dharma. And you'll do the best you can do usually in those situations. Just like the best you can do in your Svadharma, in the career you choose, if it's in connection with your Svadharma. Like I just used the example of me with my work. If I'm not doing this kind of stuff, when I'm not, there's much more of a temptation or the possibility that I'm going to argue and fight and be an egoistic monster. When I'm doing this kind of work, though, it's much harder to do that because I'm stepping into a different role. People look to me to be in that role. It's easy to be in that role because I love the teachings and I'm in that situation. The vibration is higher. This is why, again, often people, when I talk about studying astrology and teaching and doing that stuff, I'm talking about it for that reason. Because again, if it's just this thing where you're gathering information and whatnot, you're not elevating the vibration in your mind. It's not because it's just some philosophy I have. It's because it's an energetic connection to Dharma. When you're learning, especially sacred teachings, you're aligning with Dharma and with higher principles and higher wisdom, and you're connecting to a higher part of yourself, not just the ego and your desires, which is Kama, which has to do with the 3rd house, the 7th house, and the 11th house. Opposite of those things is Dharma, which is the 1st house, the 5th house, and the 9th house. So when you're in alignment with Dharma, especially through things like education, and specifically this type of education, where you're learning this type of stuff, not just learning, creative writing at community college or something, but even then it's higher vibration. But especially if you're learning stuff like this, you're going to be in a higher level of vibration in your mind. And you're going to bring the best you have to that subject. And that subject is going to bring out the best you have naturally because it's connected to Dharma, to transcendent truth. So I'm talking about all these things because this is a sign of Leo and especially the nakshatra of Magha. Magha is connected to the Pitris, the divine ancestors. What do you think divine ancestors mean? It means the rishis, the gurus, the traditions of this stuff I'm speaking about right now. All of this wisdom that we're so lucky to have learned, that you're so lucky to have found, it might be the greatest thing that's ever happened in your life, is finding this wisdom. But do you appreciate it? I hope you do. Do you appreciate what you spend your time and money and mind on other than stuff like this? What else do you ever think about that is as important as this? Just like what else do you ever do or practice or do in your life that is more important or that's going to change you at all, except for things like yoga and meditation and breath? What else do you ever do that is anywhere near as important? My guru Amma says meditation is more precious than gold. I mean, she says this stuff very intentionally. A moment spent in meditation is more valuable than gold or something. This wisdom is more valuable than like anything else you're going to do in your life or that you're going to learn. Filling your mind with this and having your mind revolve and your life revolve around this stuff is the reason people evolve and ascend, and not just intellectually. Again, we want to eat and eat and eat information. And it's like, oh, now Sam's talking about this. Oh, now somebody else is going to talk about this. And oh, now there's this astrology. There's that thing. There's this, there's that. And it's just a lot of food in our mind. And nothing changes with our habits. And we don't even go deeply into the wisdom. It just stays on the surface, doesn't change anything. This is what Leo and Magha are about, where you give reverence to the divine teachings. This isn't a joke. This isn't a game. You're not going to live forever. And this knowledge that you've been fortunate to even access in this lifetime, which you've probably had hundreds of lifetimes where you never heard of any of this stuff. 150 years ago, everybody was living on a farm trying to not die of worms or diarrhea and live to be 30, and that was it. That was your life. I mean, you've never heard of this kind of stuff. So in many ways, you live in the most blessed time that humanity has ever seen, to be able to access this transcendent teaching and wisdom. So that is what you want to understand about this Magha, Nakshatra, these Petries, these divine ancestors. It's not just your family that you were born into in this lifetime, which that is also what Magha is about, the lineage, because remember, the king isn't elected. It's not like a president. The king isn't elected. The king is ascended, which means Prince Charles or Andrew or Harry or whoever they are, one day are going to be king, not because they did anything to earn it, except being born, except for popping out of the womb of this lady who married this guy, whose mother married this guy who has this lineage. That's the only reason they would ever be king. You couldn't get elected. And so it's that lineage first that is your family lineage in this lifetime. You were born into a family that had a lineage and a heritage, and you were taught certain things. And in many ways, that's also the bedrock of your identity that you come into this world with, was the values and the legacy and the power you were given in the early part of your life. Doesn't mean it has to stay the power in your entire life, but you also shouldn't overlook the fact that you were born into a certain ethic and value system. And that's a very foundational part of your nature, the good and the bad. Once we rebel against it, we can tend to overlook or forget the good part of it. But look at the good part of how you were raised as well, and how your parents did the best they could do. Your parents and your extended family, again, even if it was terrible, it was the best they could do. And, I use my guru Amma as an example. Amma always says, your parents did the best they could do. You should love them and cherish them, simply because they did the best that they could do. And, for your benefit and for theirs, and, to cleanse the lineage, connect with your celestial family. That's your real family. Your real family isn't the family that gave birth to your physical body. Okay, that family raised you and brought you into this world at this time to give you an experience that was really the culmination of your last lifetimes. The birth family you were born into and your childhood and all of that was really the culmination of all of your past lifetimes, and then they gave you this foundation for this lifetime. And then it's your life. And that early childhood is really very much related to Ketu and like the end of the past lifetime cycle. And the rest of your life really starts with a lot of that Rahu energy, where, but I'm here to figure this out. And we rebel against our preconditioning, which is shown through Ketu and the childhood. And in that way, we create our new family based on our new values and the power that we came into life with, which again, you came into life with a certain power, with a certain Leo quality that came from your early experiences and this And again, this archetype of this Magha sort of lineage, your birth family, just look at it like that. But again, if you just stay defined by your birth family your whole life, you're not going to grow either. And that's definitely not the spirit of even like what Alma said, where we should honor our past and our family and our parents. Yeah, we honor them. It doesn't mean we live our whole life to try to please them and make them happy. No, we have to live our own life and see them as, with great reverence for bringing us into the world and doing their best. But then we need to connect to our celestial divine family, which are the Petries, the divine ancestors, not just the ancestors in this lifetime through this body and this karma of this lifetime. Those people are the ones that the shared karma in this lifetime with them, who raised you and you had a relationship with, but you're a transcendent being. You're not just the person in this body, in this lifetime, who was raised by these people. Again, the more you're not living that way, the more you're going to be attached to the ego in this lifetime. How much is that a part of your life, what I'm saying? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, that's right. But do you really live that way? Do you really live as if you're a transcendent being, connected to transcendent teachings and realizing, oh, yes, people did the best they could do, and I love and forgive them, and I got so much gratitude for what my parents did, or my siblings, or this or that, whoever it was, because I realized I'm not defined by my lineage in this lifetime. And it's awful that, I have this situation with my mother or my father or my sister or my brother or whoever it is. There's this karma there. Does it really define you? Or are you still like, but this is why I'm still bad relationships, because my mother was this way, and we're still cycling through all of it, and we're still attached to it, and we're still all with it. How much of again, I'm talking about this because the things I was saying earlier about the Leo and the power struggles with the other people and the this and the that you're still doing as an adult, you realize that has a direct correlation to how attached you are to all that stuff that happened when you were still a kid, right? You realize that, right? And you realize, again, especially with a lot of Western healing modalities, the whole solution is to keep going back into the childhood, analysis. Let's analyze childhood. Let's analyze what happened, and we're working through it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not. Even though it sounds like I'm making fun of it a little bit, I'm not, because obviously we need to make peace with those kinds of things. But there's also this obsession with constantly going back, and I'm working through this childhood stuff still, and I'm 70 years old, and one day I'll work through it. Look, at some point, there's a couple of ways to look at it. There's working through it, but the working through it is also, you're putting a lot of energy into going back into that thing. But there's also transcending it. How much is working through it, and how much is just, in some ways, a kind of narcissism about how, oh yeah, this was me, and I'm this, and me, I'm that, and all this attachment to all of this thing that is not real, at least not ultimately real. It really happened, but it really happened maybe decades ago. And again, are you being present? And again, I'll say this, it's fine to be doing all that. How much of that are you doing that and meditating? How much of yes, I'm in therapy and counseling and therapy and this, and every day I sit and become totally present, connect with the breath, surrender the past, surrender this, and totally connect. Are you doing both, or are you just doing one? Because I think the ones that are so like, oh, therapy, aren't doing the other. They're not like, and every day I connect with the past and I surrender and I'm letting go and connecting with that which is only in the present, and forgiveness, gratitude. Because in the breath, in the moment, there's no room for none of that. It's just not there. It's just, you have to put a lot of energy into keeping that up. It takes a lot of energy to keep that charge. I don't know how people do it, frankly. I just don't know how people do it. I just don't know how people keep that charge alive about how all that stuff that happened. Oh no, it's still here. I don't know how they do it. I can't do it. I can get worked up about it for about a few conversations, and I still feel the pain of the things that happened. I do. I had a lot happen to me. I still feel it. But it's like, if I feel it and some of it still really hurts, and it's just like, I get it. And then it's like, okay, I can't do it anymore. Whew. I need it. It's much easier to be unburdened by that, unburdened by the stories of the past. And again, I'm not judging and saying it's bad, but I'm saying there's another option. And you live in the Western world, you live through these Western healing modalities of therapy and going back into it and this and that, but there's other ways. And again, things like yoga and sadhana and spiritual practice is really the opposite. It's coming into the present, where none of that exists. Again, it doesn't mean your emotions about it don't exist. Your emotions exist, but meditation is about devotion, and it's not negating that. It's just going deeper into it. And in fact, I will say this, I think until someone is able to sit and go deeper into all of that emotional pain and etc., they're never going to get past that stuff, because there's all this pain and frustration and attachment to all of this, and fear and anger, and all of that charge is still there. There's no devotion. There's no love. There's no joy and space. And there's just fear of all of the negative emotion. And the way through that is through surrender and trust. And again, these teachings that I'm talking about from these great rishis and these great practices that come from these great rishis, it's not bypassing. Sometimes people say, well, you can't just sit there and meditate it away. Bypassing. Again, these are people that have never meditated. That's not what it is. You're not bypassing anything when you're meditating. You're, in fact, showing up for exactly what's going on there. You're just not afraid of whatever's going to come up. You just let it pass, like waves on the ocean. There are turbulent waves. There are peaceful waves. It's just wave. And meditation and spiritual practices are practice. You have to do them. And at first, they're difficult. Not that difficult, but they're there. Saying mantras, at first it's difficult. Discipline is difficult because we don't want to be disciplined. We don't want our ego to be disciplined. Our ego wants to be in control. And discipline is the death of the ego. The ego wants to be out of control, running the show, jacked up with emotion. And meditation and spiritual practice is to thin out the ego and cultivate sattva, sattvic purity, surrender. And it's a very simple scientific way to do it. It's not rocket science. Your problems are not the first ones that have ever happened. You're not a special case. It's attachment to fear and anger in the past, and the antidote is silence, breath, mantra, peace, and yes, contemplating these higher truths. But again, this great wisdom that you have access to, don't waste that time just on the sort of hamster wheel, as someone said, going back and forth. Of course, we have to go back and understand, and there's definitely benefit to counseling and all of that stuff so we can understand, but then do practices as well. And I would imagine and bet that pretty soon, after a while, the more practice you do, the less therapy or counseling or processing of all of the toxic emotion and negative attachment that you'll need to be doing. But again, that's no one's business but yours, and no one's judgment. It sounds like I'm judging it. I'm not judging it, but I'm saying it. I think it is out of balance. Definitely think it's out of balance, particularly in the West and particularly in the modern world. Definitely. I hear a lot more stuff about analysis and this and therapy than I do about meditation. Really do. And so this is how to, we're a multifaceted being. And I'm talking about these things now because this Magha, this Nakshatra of Magha, this lineage of the divine ancestry that is your heritage, that you've been fortunate enough to come across in this lifetime, is really the key. And, I've been so blessed to not only find these teachings, but find these great gurus, my guru Amma, great Indian master. Again, you can imbibe her teachings online now with full HD video, seeing these living masters. My God, I wish I would have been around when I was coming up. Sri Ravi Shankar, another great spiritual teacher I've met, Gurudev. There are other ones that are, Nityananda and Sadhguru and others that are just bringing the amazing wisdom that the world has never had access to before. So if anything makes me hopeful, it's that the next generation coming up, as we get past all the stuff now, have access to so much more than just capitalism and greed and attachment to the materiality that we're sort of awakening from. The real great awakening is we're awakening from that illusion. Excuse me. And it's people like you or us and these great teachings that come from these rishis that is actually the true source of our mighty power. It's our true lineage, our celestial family, not just the birth family. And so this is why I'm talking about this a lot here now too. And again, my apologies if I sounded insulting to anyone who gets a lot out of therapy. I've been to therapy before, and it was helpful definitely for a while. Not as long, because I had been doing meditation for such a long time before that again, the temptation to just keep going back into that stuff just after a while, it was harder for me to keep doing it. And I felt like I got the use out of it. But again, it's not an either or. But they're different aspects of the same process of surrendering to the past and the shackles of the past and connecting to the present. And again, and seeing yourself not just as this limited being who was born in this lifetime to this family, to this lineage, but as a soul being who is transcendent and is connected to a transcendent lineage. And so this next cycle in Leo is very powerful for that. And again, I just wanted to let people know about the member course, or I'm sorry, about the member site. Again, you can get these daily forecasts written by Sebastian Uria based on the classical Indian Panchanga, the lunar day, the Nakshatra, the Vara, and also the sign. Every day he does a fantastic job. And then Melissa Flores Davis does a great calendar. We have September about to begin. She'll have the monthly calendar up, which has all of the transits coming that month, and also an astro diary. So you can actually track what happened each day and notice, oh, okay, yeah, that was the day that the sun or that the moon moved into my, where my moon is, or where the sun moved over my natal Jupiter. And oh yeah, this happened. And amazing way to really learn and track day to day. And then I'm going to be doing a new, and I will be doing my new and full moon forecast this month as well, where I go and talk about this sign of Leo and then the opposite full moon in Aquarius for each of the 12 signs. Because whether you know it or not, those things are the higher cycles that you're going through all the time. And as I said, if you enjoy this, then please like and share and subscribe. And I appreciate I'm seeing all of the great comments here. Angela Lewis says, I'm crushing on Sam Jeppy. Boy, what a great comment. Finally, Angela, after all these years, finally crushing. You see that, folks? It only took 10 years for Angela to be crushing on me. No. Again, please like, share, and subscribe. And share this with others. I think this is very helpful for people. And we'll